Stepping out of a Jedi cruiser, the Jedi youngling Ahsoka Tano delivers a message to the Jedi of Obi Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker. Obi Wan assumes that Ahsoka was going to be his new Padawan learner, but to his surprise, she points towards Anakin. After the Battle of Christophsis, Skywalker talks to Ahsoka about how reckless she was, and now she would have never made her as Obi Wan's Padawan. But what if Ahsoka was Obi Wan's Padawan? How would this change the fate of Anakin? Would Obi Wan fall at Vader's blade? All is about to be revealed. Descending upon the planet of Christophsis, Grandmaster Yoda senses his plan to calm the reckless Knight Skywalker has not been successful. Stepping out of his own cruiser, he sees Anakin and Ahsoka looking away from each other, with Obi-Wan looking amused. Asking Anakin about Ahsoka, Anakin admits that a Padawan learner would not be beneficial to him at that moment, and that Ahsoka was in fact deserving of a master like Obi-Wan. Yoda reluctantly agrees to Anakin's request, and Ahsoka heads to the test system with her new master. After completing their mission to Jabba's palace, Ahsoka and Obi-Wan head back to the Jedi Temple to begin her next phase of training. Under Obi-Wan, Ahsoka learns to be the model Jedi, following the Jedi Code more strictly than she had ever done under Anakin. However, just like Anakin, she struggles to let go of her reckless and aggressive tendencies. Although Ahsoka learns the art of Form 3 Sorosu from Obi-Wan, her physique and natural aggression result in Ahsoka using Form 4 Utaru. For this reason, Obi-Wan grows concerned with Ahsoka throughout the Clone War, having seen Qui-Gon suffer from using Form 4. Furthermore, without Ahsoka, Anakin grows more disillusioned without the Jedi Order, often leaning upon the advice of his mentor Chancellor Palpatine, as well as Padme. Moving forward to the bombing of the Jedi Temple, Ahsoka does not leave the Jedi Order for two reasons. Firstly, because of Obi-Wan's tutelage, Ahsoka has developed a greater devotion to the Jedi Order than she had ever done under Anakin, and secondly, the Jedi Order could not allow for Obi-Wan's reputation as a model Jedi to be tainted. Nevertheless, doubts begin to circulate within Ahsoka's mind regarding her position as a now Jedi Knight. As the Clone War reaches its end, Anakin and Obi-Wan again take down Dooku, but given Ahsoka is no longer a commander of the 501st Legion, Anakin has very little time to celebrate the fall of Dooku, as he heads off to Mandalore in search of Maul. As a result, Anakin doesn't get cross with the Council for failing to make him a master, as he never gets a chance to speak with Palpatine and hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise. Instead, Palpatine will patiently wait for Anakin's return. After Maul is captured in a ray shield, Anakin returns, as well as Obi-Wan, who has defeated Grievous. Palpatine uses this opportunity to tell Anakin about the tragedy of Darth Plagueis, and provide him with a place on the Council, knowing Anakin would be even more furious given he had just captured Maul. The events proceed just as Palpatine had foreseen. Anakin is simmering with rage at not being given the rank of Master, after the Clone War had seemingly finished, and stomps back to Palpatine's office. Sidious is able to seduce Anakin to the dark side relatively easily, and together they begin their destruction of the Jedi. While Sidious marches to the Jedi Temple and commences Order 66, Anakin heads to Mustafar, thoughts of Padme now at the back of his mind, now only with the intent of decapitating all of the Separatists as quickly as possible. The Jedi don't know what has hit them. Everywhere you looked, the bodies of Jedi younglings, knights, and masters were scattered. The remaining council members can only look on in horror as they attempt to defend the Jedi Temple. Suddenly, the blur of a green lightsaber descended upon the chaos, cutting through the clones with ease as the diminutive figure of Grandmaster Yoda entered and assisted the remaining Jedi. The presence of Yoda provided a lease of life for the Jedi, as slowly, the tide of the battle for the Jedi Temple turned. Back on the planet of Mustafar, Vader had easily decapitated the Separatist Council with his blade. Yet, he still wanted more blood on his blade. Sprinting back to his starfighter, he's about to jump in, when from above, a starship descends, causing Vader's robes to ripple. Immediately, Anakin ignites his blade in anticipation. The ramp slowly lowers, revealing the figure of Jedi Master Obi Wan Kenobi, and behind him, the Jedi Knight Ahsoka Tano. Without a moment's indecision, Vader lunges towards Obi-Wan, who ignites his blade just in time. Obi-Wan is clearly reluctant to attack his former Padawan, who capitalizes by pushing Obi-Wan back to the edge of a lava pit. Ahsoka intervenes, and swipes her Vader, allowing Obi-Wan to regain his composure. The formerly inseparable trio fought through the mining complex, with Ahsoka and Obi-Wan alternating between defensive duties to recover their energy and to tire Vader. Knowing he was beginning to tire out, Vader quietly mutters into his comlink to request transportation as he was now far away from his own ship. Luckily for Vader, his new master had already sensed his distress through the Force, and a short while later, landed. Obi-Wan and Ahsoka sensed his new presence too, and made a move back towards their ship. But before they could make it, the cloaked figure of Sidious stepped forward, and seized Ahsoka by the throat, before discarding her at the foot of their ship, her lightsabers tumbling into the abyss below. Obi-Wan tightened the grip on his blade, at the sight of his now injured Padawan. Sidious smirked at Obi-Wan's discomfort and unleashed Force Lightning on the Jedi Master, which he just about blocked with his blade. Vader moved swiftly forward, and Obi-Wan used his other hand to push Vader away with the Force. Ahsoka's eyes fluttered open, and she knew what she had to do. Hobbling to her feet, the Togruta moved into their shuttle and took off into the darkness. Heading for Coruscant once more, Ahsoka headed straight for the apartment of Padme Amidala, but as she does so, she senses a great pain in the Force as Obi-Wan falls. Now looking through misty eyes, Ahsoka sees that Padme is nowhere to be found, and instead heads for the Jedi Temple, knowing that Sidious would not have returned so soon. Searching the temple, she sees a rather exhausted Master Windu, who had also sensed the loss of Obi-Wan in the Force. Asking for the whereabouts of Padme, Windu points to a nearby medical facility. Ahsoka sprints away, wanting to get away from her past, and now move on to the future. Ahsoka kept running for what seemed an eternity, oblivious to all of the innocent civilians crying out in anguish. What was once a thriving cityscape was now a crippled pile of destruction. But this mattered not to Ahsoka. She would deal with that later if she could. Rolling behind several crates, Ahsoka used her stealth to move past several clone troopers, who were patrolling the streets. Knowing the front entrance to the medical facility would be guarded, Ahsoka climbed the rooftop and jumped through an open window to make her way through. Finally, Ahsoka made her way to the ward of Padme Amidala. Grandmaster Yoda stood by the bedside and turned around to meet the Jedi Knight. No words were necessary, as Padme took her final breaths, after giving birth to Luke and Leia. Yoda is relieved to hear that several key members of the Jedi Order had survived, including Master Windu. Ahsoka also confirms the fall of Obi-Wan, which Yoda had felt in the Force. Obi-Wan's loss was a setback, as Yoda had planned to teach him the path to immortality from Qui-Gon, but the Force had saved Ahsoka for a reason. Handing over the children to Ahsoka, she cradled one in each arm. Surely he didn't expect her to raise both children. Following the fall of Obi-Wan, Ahsoka had only thought of living a quiet life, somewhere away from the prying eyes of the new Empire. But the sight of Padme's children had turned that thought on its head. The fury she had aimed to dissipate into the Force towards Vader was now returned to its height. Yoda could sense Ahsoka's internal worries, and looking at Padme's corpse for one last time, they headed off back to the Jedi Temple. Yoda and Windu gather up all of the remaining Jedi, and not to their surprise, it is a rather modest crowd. Yoda decides that they should be split up, and avoid contact at all costs, unless the new established Empire set foot on their planet. Ahsoka goes to leave, with the thought of raising the children on Shilly, but Yoda stops her, requesting for her to head to Alderaan, with the Organas instead. Ahsoka bows her head to Yoda and Windu, but still wonders why she would be needed. She was quite sure that the Organas would be capable of raising the children on their own. The answer would arrive almost a decade later. Returning from a diplomatic mission, Ahsoka could sense something gravely wrong with the planet of Alderaan. As she approached the peak of a mountain range, Ahsoka just managed to swerve a hailstorm of missiles. Looking behind her, she saw several modified editions of V-Wing starfighters, which are moving towards their rusty interceptor at speed. Using all of her immense piloting skill, Ahsoka manages to outmaneuver all of the fighters, making it to the surface below. Landing near the royal palace, Ahsoka could already see the destruction which had taken place in the nearby streets. Rushing inside the palace, she sees the Organas frantically scrambling to gather their possessions as they made their escape. It seemed that their rebellious attitude to the Empire had not been unnoticed. Luke and Leia are also sprinting around in panic, but they are relieved to see Ahsoka, who they had known to be their protector. With no time to waste, this was the moment to implement the emergency plan. The Organas headed for their personal blockade runner, whereas Ahsoka took a small cruiser, and headed for the planet of Dagobah with the twins, where she knew Yoda and Windu would be awaiting her presence. Navigating her way through the lattice web of Imperial activity was not easy, but her knowledge of the galaxy proved to be vital, as she made a safe passage to the swampy planet. Yoda is pleased to see the progress of Luke and Leia. Whilst Ahsoka had been busy with missions and furthering her Jedi training, she had taken the time to teach the twins as much as she could about the Force. Thus now, they were able to handle the next phase of their training. Having had time to think about the mistakes made by the Jedi during the Clone Wars, Yoda knew he had to readjust the code stance on attachments. This would be a perfect opportunity to experiment with what he believed to be a necessary evolution. With Yoda often training the twins, this gave Master Windu the opportunity to train Ahsoka in Form 7 and lightsaber combat. Even though Ahsoka would never be able to completely satisfy the fury and malicious intent required for the pad, incorporating the unpredictability into her existing fighting style would be valuable. Ahsoka also kept in touch with the Organas, who were working behind the eyes of the Empire, to form a rebellion. However, one day, Ahsoka would lose contact with the Organas, prompting her to make her way back into the galaxy. Ahsoka had heard rumours of a revolutionary superweapon known as the Death Star, wiping out planets with a solitary concentrated laser blast. Approaching its coordinates, she attempted to contact the Organas once more, but once again, only static played. Without sensing it through the Force, Ahsoka knew that the Organas would be on the Death Star. It was time to put her new abilities to the test. Disguising herself amongst the debris, Ahsoka used the Force to sussily pull her towards the Death Star. She knew that the Emperor or Vader would be able to sense her presence, regardless of whether or not she used the Force. Gently resting the ship on top of a garbage chute, Ahsoka placed an oxygen mask on, and used the Force to pull her and R2 inside, silently decapitating several workers. Ahsoka headed for the detention blocks, which she knew would be far below the centre of the space station. Using her lightsabers to impale all of the stormtroopers she crossed paths with, Ahsoka found her way to a database, and with the help of R2, found the Organas to be in the AA detention block. Making her move there, she is suddenly stopped by an overwhelming darkness in the Force. Ahsoka instinctively turned around, her senses now fully alerted to her surroundings. She recognised the darkness, but this time it was pure. Shaking off the darkness, Ahsoka headed for the cell of the Organas. Opening the cell door with a gentle swipe of her hand, she sees Bail and Breya on opposing sides of the cell, tied to the wall with cuffs and looking exhausted. Cutting through the cuffs with 2 slashes from her blades, they both slumped to the floor, their lethargic bodies hitting the floor with thuds. Scooping them both over each one of her shoulders, the darkness she had felt earlier had faded away, but Ahsoka remained alert. Above her, the alarms flashed and then go off, alerted to the stormtroopers that Ahsoka disposed of earlier. Chaos ensues, as stormtroopers rush from one corridor to the next, searching for the culprit. Ahsoka easily evades the stormtroopers, but the darkness is getting closer. An encounter was inevitable. Using 2 nearby hover stretchers from the medical bay, Ahsoka alleviates the weight off of her shoulders by placing the Organas on the beds, heading back towards the location of her ship. Rounding the corner to a more narrow corridor, the presence of Vader appeared. Vader's blade was already ignited. Having killed the Master, he would now dispose of the apprentice. Ahsoka, however, had other ideas. With the Organas now awake, Ahsoka pushes them around the corner to safety and pulls the stretchers towards her into the chest of Vader. Vader slashed him with ease, the debris ricocheting off of the walls. Taking a giant step forward, the Sith Lord clashed blades with Ahsoka. Even with her increased lightsaber abilities, this was not a fight Ahsoka would or try to win. Somersaulting backwards, Ahsoka is able to move the battle to a wider area, helping her use her natural agility. Vader is surprised by Ahsoka's intense offensive strikes, and begins to step backwards to reassess the situation. Pushing Vader back several paces, Ahsoka slashes a control panel to her side, and the blast doors activate. Sprinting away, Ahsoka deflects bolts from stormtroopers who had arrived to assist Vader, and she ordered the Organas to move, before they made their way down a garbage chute. Considering they lived a life of regal-like opulence, the Organas did not mind the putrid slide, having been in life-threatening situations on numerous occasions. Landing in a damp pit, Ahsoka puts on her mask, and cuts through the roof to perform a perfect circle. Kicking the roof out, she opens the ramp to the ship, and provides breathing apparatus for the Organas. They stumble aboard, just as they hear the rapid footsteps of the stormtroopers, and take off into space. Heading back to Dagobah, the dramatic escape of the Organas only made them more of a target, and coupled with the threat of the Death Star, it was time to strike back at the Empire. Leaving Dagobah, the group all head off to the Rebellion's hidden flagship, housing the previously rescued Admiral Akbar. Ahsoka sets out the plans, having been able to gain a competent understanding of the schematics of the Death Star. Ahsoka would head the aerial squadron, Yoda would use battle meditation, leaving Windu, Luke and Leia to deal with the internal threats. It was ambitious, but a victory would prove to be a massive morale booster. The rebels depart from their base, hovering near the surrounding moons of the Death Star, before they moved in. Ahsoka leads her squadron forward, attracting the attention of the Imperial agents. As expected, TIE fighters emerge from the sliding hangar doors, allowing for the Jedi to glide through. After an initial wave of the attack, Ahsoka and her team swoop away, pursued by the TIE pilots. Getting them to separate through clever use of asteroids, the rebels pick them off, but out of the hangar emerge a secondary wave of fighters, this wave in far greater numbers. This was far more than they had expected. Meanwhile, Windu, Luke and Leia have entered the Death Star, and are not given even a moment to adapt to their unfamiliar surroundings, as they meet a barrage of blaster fire. Crushing most of them with a loose piece of Durasteel, they begin to pick off the stormtroopers, looking for Vader. They didn't have to wait. Unlike with Ahsoka, Vader was surprised to see Master Windu, and 2 younger Jedi they had not seen before. Yet the Dark Lord felt as if he knew the 2 Jedi from an area which Sidious had tried so hard to lock away. Attacking Windu, the Karun Master is as aggressive as ever, feeding off of Vader's dark side energy to fuel his Vapad attacks. Luke and Leia try to get him some hits, but the speed of the battle left them in a daze. The blurs of red and purple are now making sparks in the low ceiling, and a cave-in was imminent. Luke and Leia decide to accelerate the process by pulling the ceiling downwards, separating Vader and Windu, with stormtroopers now on their heels. The Death Star shook slightly from the attempted rebel attack, providing the trio with the chance they needed. Heading to the control tower with full speed, they tear through opposing obstacles and slash at all of the controls, reducing all of the operating officers to dust. Vader was not far behind, however, and they could not take any chances. Vader strode to the ruined command bridge with additional intensity, and the Jedi took the opportunity to run to their ship. With the stormtroopers spread out, the defences around the ship were minimal, and the Jedi got away. Joining in with the battle, they are fortunate that they had managed to escape in time, as the super weapon was now ablaze, the rebel fleet chipping away at the Death Star's rapidly falling defences. Leaving the Death Star to explode, they noticed that Vader managed to escape unscathed in his TIE Advanced shuttle, but that would not dampen the spirits of the rebels in that moment. One threat had gone, but soon it would be replaced by another. The celebration of the destruction of the Death Star was short-lived for the rebels. After discovering that the supposedly impenetrable Death Star had been infiltrated, Palpatine went on a rampage. Vader bore the brunt of the punishment, his failure to dispose of the Jedi hurting his pride. Had Vader not reported the connection of Anakin Skywalker to the younger Jedi, he would surely have been dead. The news of the younger Jedi could present a thorn in the side of Sidious's plans. Ramping up the production of another Death Star, Vader is unsure, but knows better than to argue with his master. He was fortunate Sidious had allowed for him to be distracted with the pursuit of the Skywalkers. He now hated Sidious more than he had ever hated the Jedi. Soon, he would meet his end. Entering his meditation chamber, he began to focus all of his hatred of Sidious into power, but he was constantly disturbed by thoughts of the Skywalkers. This could not continue. He needed to know the truth. Against the orders of the Emperor, Vader jumped into his TIE Advanced shuttle and headed for the planet of Naboo. Having not been here for several years, he couldn't help but notice that the planet was worse than the chaos seen on other worlds. Being Palpatine's home world, Naboo had been under increasing scrutiny following the execution of Queen Apolana. Landing in one of the more remote areas, he made his way without hindrance to the grave of Padme Amidala. Walking circles around the tomb for what seemed like hours, he suddenly found that he was not alone. Out of a nearby archway stepped out the relatively new Naboo representative, Pooja Nabari, whom Vader had seen before. Alongside her bodyguard, they looked unconcerned by Vader's presence, angering the Sith Lord. But he did not travel here to kill. He was seeking answers, and answers he would receive, as the niece of Padme Amidala began to recount what truly happened to the former Queen of Naboo. Although she didn't know all of the details, Vader had found out enough. He had definitely not killed Padme in his anger. Heading back to his ship, he set about avenging for the lies. Across the galaxy, the rebels and Jedi were thinking similarly to the Sith Lord. The construction of another Death Star meant there was no respite for the rebels. At this rate, this would be a resource race they would lose. Assembling their best combatants, it was time to strike the fatal blow or be defeated. Knowing the difficulty in defeating the Emperor, Yoda decides that he should join Mace Windu, Luke and Leia, whilst once again, Ahsoka would be in charge of the aerial strategy. Leaving the rebel rendezvous point, the rebels know they can't use the same tactics as before. There was no doubt the Emperor had covered that. Shifting their position towards an asteroid field, the Jedi begin to shift their heavy rocks towards the Imperial destroyers guarding the incomplete Death Star. Not anticipating an asteroid attack, many of the rocks clatter into the surface of the ships, enough to get the attention of the Imperial officers. The shields go up just as the rebels had predicted, and then they waited. The circle of defences slowly began to spread out through the asteroid field, and the rebels moved in. Swooping in from all angles, the Empire used their turrets to their desired effect, taking out many of the starfighters, but the Star Destroyers are the victims of their own crossfire, with several damaging each other in the chaos. The chaos allows the Jedi to slip through the net, and to the Death Star. However, the Death Star does not lay dormant, and from its makeshift hangar, a group of TIE fighters pursue the Jedi. Luke proves to be a capable pilot, but the ship skids to an undignified halt in one of the Death Star's as yet unused areas. Stumbling their way out of the smoky mess, the Jedi hear the sound of pronounced footsteps. Looking upwards through the dust cloud, they see the Emperor and Vader. Pushing the ship over the edge of the platform, Palpatine brings a heavy beam down onto Luke and Leia, which would have pinned them had it not been for Yoda levitating the beam in midair. The twins roll away, but Palpatine anticipates this and shocks them. Yoda places the beam down, and along with Windu, engages the two Sith. The Jedi work in perfect harmony, attempting to distort the ferocity of the Sith. However, Palpatine was almost casual, deflecting the hits with derision. Vader, meanwhile, was taken away from the battle with the Jedi Masters to focus on the twins, who had gotten back to their feet. They had exponentially improved from the short time since their previous duel, managing to stand strong in response to Vader's powerful blows. Or perhaps it was reluctance on Vader's part. Keeping one eye on Palpatine, Vader fails to defend from a powerful force push from Leia, sending him into some scaffolding. Getting back to his feet, he ignores the charging Leia and speeds towards Sidious, who's gaining the upper hand on the Jedi. Sidious turns around, feeling the sudden treachery, but he is too late. Vader had destroyed his master. Behind him, he doesn't react in time to Leia's slash to his back, as Luke cried out in anguish. It didn't matter. In his final moments, he had fulfilled his destiny and ended years of personal anguish. Luke scoops up the corpse of the former Sith Lord, leaving Palpatine to rot, and they are picked up by one of the remaining rebel units. Once aboard, they receive a transmission from Admiral Akbar, stating the reinforcements were on their way. Sure enough, the skies were soon full of rebel ships of all sizes including one cruiser. Without the guidance of the Emperor and Vader, the strategy and morale of the Empire begins to crumble. Above the battle hovered a single starfighter piloted by Ahsoka Tano. Feeling the events upon the incomplete Death Star, she could hear the voice of Obi Wan telling her to head back down to the battle. With a great weight off of her shoulders, she would do just that. That is it for what if Ahsoka could have made us Obi Wan's Padawan. If you enjoyed this, please like this video, and if you're new to this channel and my other channel, subscribe for more tips. And as always, leave a comment on what if you'd like to see next and how I can improve my videos. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.